Michael Shannon.
Hello, all you lucky boys, and welcome to Hand Me the Mic, a podcast celebrating and examining the work of American actor Michael Shannon. I'm your host, Daniella Mazzio, and hello, all you lucky boys, and welcome to Hand Me the Mic, a podcast celebrating and examining the work of American actor Michael Shannon. I'm your host, Daniella Mazzio, and hello, all you lucky boys, and welcome to...
Do you ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster?
I don't think so, but I could check with the kitchen.
It's Groundhog Day!
Groundhog time.
1,000 people freezing their butts off waiting to worship a rat.
Weatherman Phil Connors is spending the day in Puxatawney, Pennsylvania.
Phil? Ned Ryerson. I did the whistling belly button trick at the high school talent show.
Bing!
Bang!
But Phil's about to find out he's not just stuck in Puxatawney.
Will you be checking out today, Mr. Connors?
Chance of departure today, 100%.
He's stuck
It's Groundhog Day!
in Groundhog Day.
I'm reliving the same day over and over.
Phil?
Ned Ryerson?
Today, we'll be talking about Harold Ramis's 1993 time loop romantic comedy Groundhog Day. Bill Murray, in his last collaboration with once close friend Ramis, plays Phil Connors, a bitter weatherman who begins living the gray and blizzardy titular February 2nd holiday over and over again. He starts to fall in love with Andie MacDowell's headstrong Rita, but falling in love is just the first strike cracking Phil's hardened exterior as his seemingly endless predicament forces him to consider what makes for a fulfilling life in the most limiting of circumstances. Groundhog Day may be set in the Pennsylvania home of Punxsutawney, but this is a quintessentially Midwest and arguably Chicago film. Shot almost exclusively in Woodstock, Illinois, Groundhog Day features the Chicago-born talents of Ramis, two Murray brothers, and small appearances from Chicago actors Marita Garrity, David Pasquesi, and most importantly, the film debut of Michael Shannon. He may have a mere 2 lines in the movie, but in the show's nature, that's not going to stop us from talking Groundhog Day, where it sits in Shannon's career, and what the movie tells us about the drudgery of American life. But before we go any further, it's time for me to hand the mic over to my guest. Today, I'm joined by comedian, writer, educator, and co-host of the Bechdel Cast podcast, Caitlin Durante. They are also a Pennsylvania native, so we might just be on our way to a proper East Coast Midwest showdown. Listeners, join me in welcoming Caitlin. Caitlin, how are you?
Hello, I'm so good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me on Hand Me the Mic today to talk about, I think, what is a true romp of a movie.
Oh, such a romp. I'm delighted to be here. This is one of my, I would say, all-time favorite movies.
Well, I do want to ask about your history of the movie, but first, tell me, because this is a Michael Shannon podcast, what's your relationship to Michael Shannon as an actor?
Great question. So, I mean, he's certainly someone I know about. I think it probably took me many years before I was like, oh, that guy is his name is Michael Shannon. I think I had just like seen him in things for a long time and recognized his face. Mm-hmm. But it took a while because he hasn't had that many leading roles.
Exactly.
He's often the villain, but he has a very distinct face and a very distinct voice. So he is someone who will become memorable. And so probably by the time I saw, I don't know what movie it would have been where I was like, oh yeah, that's a guy who I know, and his name is Michael Shannon. I would say it happened sometime within the past decade, but I had seen him in movies for, 15 years prior to that or more. And so, he was just kind of around. And then I started to realize who he was as a person. And I think he's very talented. Again, he plays a great villain. And yeah, I enjoy him as a performer. I don't know much about his personal life or vibes, but I respect him as an actor.
I think that is really commonly the experience people have with Shannon, which is like, oh, that guy. I mean, like a quintessential that guy, especially of like the 21st century. But he does, he has that face. He just, oh my God. And he makes a meal of his like 2 lines in this movie, but they're very memorable, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But then I do want to ask, what is, you were really excited when I brought up this podcast. You were like, Groundhog Day, Michael Shannon's in it for a little bit, but I love that movie.
I basically invited myself onto the podcast.
Look, I'm not going to say no to writing your podcast experience clout. I will take all of it that I can get. We have a true iHeartRadio talent on today.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely the label that I'm most excited about. Yeah.
Yeah, our iHeartRadio talent.
Love media conglomerates. Woohoo.
We are still looking for advertisers, by the way, if you're listening. I will make some concessions now. So yeah, tell me what is your history with Groundhog Day? What puts it up in the pantheon of one of your favorite movies?
So a few different things. I, like you said, am a Pennsylvania native. I grew up in a small town called Brookville, which is about a 25 minute drive from Punxsutawney. And my mom grew up in Punxsutawney. So I have roots. Okay. And this movie, because it's set in Punxsy, as we locals call it, it was just on VHS as far back as I can remember, at my house, at my grandmother's house, who also, again, lived in Punxsutawney. And so I just like grew up watching it. And as I started, appreciating film more and more in my teens, and then I would go on to, do not 1, but 2 degrees in film, I was like, wait a minute, this is like a really well-crafted story. It's such an interesting premise. I feel like it maybe invented the time loop, like cinematic narrative device. Maybe not, but it's the first time I think most people encountered it. And since then, there have been a bunch of movies. There's that Tom Cruise Edge of Tomorrow movie. There's the Happy Death Day, Palm Springs. Probably a handful of others. But yeah, Groundhog Day was the first example I had seen, and I was like, wow, what an interesting premise. And I would count it among my favorite rom-coms, although, I mean, partly because I don't love rom-coms as a genre and I kind of need something else to be going on, but also reflecting back on the romantic storyline that unfolds in this movie, it's like incredibly problematic, where he's basically manipulating her, and like it's it's wild. But yeah, I really think this is a great movie that parts of it don't hold up so well, again, specifically the way the romance is handled, but otherwise I think it's great. And so that's my basic history with the movie.
Well, I do want to ask, because this was not filmed in Punxsy, that's the colloquial term. Yeah. Is there like how accurate is it? Is there any like hard feelings with when they didn't get this right, or this isn't really Punxsy?
Honestly, aesthetically, it looks pretty close to Western Pennsylvania. This is going to sound weird to say, but that area of Pennsylvania, and I know there are many, many pockets of like this across the U.S., but there's almost no racial diversity. And so the fact that there are 2 or 3 different Black people in the cast of, and of course they have like minuscule roles who like barely have any lines, but I'm like, I don't know if there are that many Black people in the whole of punksy or like, it's just like, it was so like blindingly white. But otherwise, and also there's a part where he rolls up in a Mercedes, like a really like souped out, like really expensive car. And I was like, where would he have gotten that? You would have had to drive like 200 miles outside of Punxsutawney to find any dealership that would sell a car like that. But otherwise, it felt pretty accurate.
Well, that's like kind of reiterates, and I think it's in the movie a little bit, but you know, the way that both of them have their philosophy on small town life, and Phil is so suffocated by it, but Rita finds it charming. And so you could say, I mean, with this being filmed in Illinois, but it really feeling accurate, there is kind of that ubiquity of how we feel and like look at some of these small, much older towns.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm excited to dig in, and especially, you know, I think, you know, with this podcast so far, you know, the format can always evolve over time, but we're
Sure.
having a lot of like kind of free flowing conversations. But I really, you know, because you are so familiar with the process of screenwriting and form.
Who, me?
I really want to start with that piece of the script here, because that is both the source of what I think works so well with this movie, and then as we get into it a little bit, also the source of a lot of tension with this movie. But for me, and I don't know if you rewatched it for this, I rewatched it a couple days ago.
I did.
And I had forgotten, I had like learned this a long time ago, but I had forgotten that kind of one of the fun screenwriting things about this movie is that in one of Harold Ramis's rewrites, he structures it along the 5 stages of grief. But it was something that like rewatching it, you can kind of feel those beats of like, okay, the first day he is in the time loop is denial. The second day he is in the time loop is, of course, I'm already forgetting, but is
bargaining?
I think bargaining. And bargaining kind of takes over, I think, the whole section of him starting to, you know, first just realizing he can do whatever he wants, but then starting to get into trying to seduce Rita. And I find that really interesting to think of, like, as you were talking about some of the problematic elements of the script, but structuring this relationship, growing relationship between him and Rita in this bargaining piece, I guess.
Also, anger is the second one. So it's denial, anger, then bargaining, then depression, then finally acceptance.
Yeah, so I think it's like the first day is when he's trying to put it all together, which kind of serves as an entry point even to the premise. And then the third day or second time he repeats is when he's starting to be like, what is going on? Why do I have to do all of this? Why am I in this situation? Why do I have to deal with all of these people again? And then the third phase, I think, is the first, in my interpretation, like the first prolonged phase of the script, which is that bargaining piece, and then depression and acceptance all kind of take their own longer pieces. But I was curious, like, did you know that was a part of the screenwriting structure, or what sticks out to you as like how the script functions and what works about it?
Right. I don't know if I was aware of that being sort of like the stages of grief being mapped onto the story, or I guess vice versa. But it's very clear to me now that I like look back at the events of this story, and I think that's a really clever way to kind of structure a story, especially of where this is the premise, where you'd have, like, of course you would be in disbelief and denial of what's going on at first, and then you'd be like, what the fuck is happening? And then you'd try to bargain with it, and this kind of maybe functions as the low point. I don't remember exactly, but there's a chunk of time where he's suicidal, and he's like, maybe I can escape this like indefinite time loop with suicide, and that doesn't work. So then, and it's also around this time that he's actually starting to like listen to the woman who he claims to love, and kind of like adopt her outlook on the world as far as just like kindness and being nice to people, regardless if you know them or not. And then he's like, wait a minute, maybe I should try that. And it's through however many days, because no one quite knows how much time he spends in the loop. But after some amount of time of like being a good person, that's what's able to allow him. So it's like accepting, I guess, that this is his fate. So might as well make the best of it. And then that ultimately gets him to February 3rd, finally. But yeah, so it's really fascinating. And then I always marvel at like, how do you repeat events of a story over and over again without feeling narratively repetitive or redundant, which is really hard to do. But I think this movie manages it really well. So that's something I've always been like fascinated by when I'm watching this.
So I was reading a bit about the process of the movie, because the production is very, very tumultuous, to say the least. And like,
I did not know about this. I'm excited to learn more.
So this might be a bit of a monologue, but basically,
no, please.
The key points are, so the script is originally written by Danny Rubin. And if you listen to, there's a Terry Gross interview with Harold Ramis where they're trying to ask him, like, what was your favorite scene you wrote for Groundhog Day? And he's like, I didn't write Groundhog Day, Danny Rubin did. But there is a lot of hands that had to play in the development of the movie. So Danny Rubin's script was, in the earliest phases, very existential, not very funny. And it got shopped around a lot. Ramis saw it, really liked it, but he was like, I think this would function more as a comedy. Rubin was having a hard time placing it. His agent left the industry, so he started distributing it himself.
Okay.
And Ramis became interested in it, and there were, from what I understand, two deals, which was one where Ramis would be attached. He brokered it for a higher budget, but there would be studio involvement, or a much more independent production that it seems like it wouldn't have involved Ramis and would have had a lower budget. So Rubin, he was skeptical of the studio interference, but decided to go with it. And it's Ramis's touch where he does a rewrite. There's kind of a back and forth with Rubin and Ramis. Then the studio is like, Danny Rubin, we have gotten as many rewrites as we want from you. Harold Ramis is taking care of rewrites from now. Go away. They let him go from the production. Harold Ramis does some rewrites, adds a lot more comedy to it. And this is allegedly what drew Bill Murray to the script.
Okay.
They had actually initially wanted Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks has like commented and been like, I was playing a lot of nice guys at the time, so you would have been expecting me to become a good person at the end, but Bill Murray is such kind of a notable crank. This is a paraphrase, but that it plays into his personality and makes that arc more interesting. But Bill Murray was really interested in Ramis's take on it, but as the script started going on, so eventually Ramis does some more rewrites, manages to get Danny Rubin rehired. So then they're in this really collaborative process, but Bill Murray is also heavily involved with what's going on with the script. And he has notes. And he starts saying he wants it to be more philosophical and less leaning into the comedy, even though that is what drew him to the script at this point. Ramis and Murray are longtime friends at this point. I mean, they've worked on so much together. There's some speculation that some tension came from Ramis was largely responsible for a lot of Bill Murray's success in creating a lot of roles for him. Bill Murray, being who he is, didn't necessarily feel that way and felt resentful. He's also going through a messy divorce throughout the production of this movie. Bill Murray, relationship with women, whole other conversation.
Ooh, yep.
relationship with people, whole other conversation generally, but he keeps calling Ramis up and is like, I really think we should do this with the scene, or I'm not feeling this part. To the point where Harold Ramis starts sending Danny Rubin in his place to work on scenes with Murray. And Danny Rubin kind of ends up in the middle of the whole situation.
Okay.
Facilitating, like, I think he describes it, if it felt like two brothers who were having a disagreement and were like sending in a friend as an intermediary. This is all in the script phase, but even by the time that they get to shooting, there are so many changes that end up happening through filming. It seems like it's pretty collaborative between Ramis and Rubin has said that he's actually quite happy with the script and it felt like it was his script. And Ramis continues to, throughout time, attribute the script to Rubin. But there are a lot of rewrites to the point where Stephen Tobolowsky, who is Ned Ryerson, is like, by the time I joined the set, it was a completely different script from the one they had handed me when I was hired, which was only like 6 months ago or something like that. And Bill Murray is just a complete tool essentially throughout all of production, and despite like Ramis being really apologetic for him and being used to him up to this point, kind of is like, he made it really difficult to shoot the movie, was showing up late, was demanding rewrites. With the pothole scene, was like screaming at costumers of saying, like, yelling at them to dry his leg as soon as possible before he got frostbite. And then we'll get into it a little bit more when we talk about Michael Shannon, but even Michael Shannon had kind of an uncomfortable role stuck between Ramis and Bill Murray towards the end of production, where things were really, really not going well in that relationship. But that is a whole diatribe. But what I find interesting with that, in terms of the product, because I'm not a person who's a fan of like, we should have toxic workplaces. This is a Labor Day episode.
What? That's
but there's something kind of interesting that you have these dueling perspectives on what this movie is. Is it a studio comedy, which is really what Harold Ramis was leaning into? He's more of the reason that Phil is so sardonic and snarky and has these little quips. A lot of that's not necessarily from improv. That's how he was writing the character, less so than like what Murray was bringing to it. And Murray is like, no, this is like, we need to have a more philosophical perspective here. So it's interesting to me because I think that tension is why the movie works, because it doesn't really set itself firmly in one direction or the other. And what works with Bill Murray's character is kind of that tension between like him being depressed and him loathing himself, and him having these moments of comedy where he is kind of snarky and quippy and injects these beats and rhythms into the script. I don't know. I find that all really interesting, especially in like Ramis is keeping it. He's the one who decides we're going to apply this 5 stages of grief structure to it, and he makes it more into a traditional 3-act structure. And so it's like everyone is kind of really pushing back on the other's perspective of what the movie is, but like ultimately it all comes together in something that feels very cohesive and feels like everyone
totally
contributed something. It's fascinating.
It really is. And I mean, I've talked a lot on the Bechdel Cast, for example, about my kind of annoyance with male redemption arc stories, which this is very much one of those. And it's tricky because, yeah, a lot of men need to adjust their behavior and have a redemption arc, I guess. But it just, I don't know. I'm like, it feels like that just kind of gives permission to men to like be shitty for a long time and then be like, well, I'll eventually be a good person. And then I don't know, but I don't know. I like this movie. The way that everything is handled, it just works for, well, not everything, but most of it works for me. I don't know.
Well, I think then that's a good segue to talking a little bit more about what is probably the most debated part of this movie, even before this conversation, which is the relationship with Rita and
Right.
how that functions. I would say I didn't talk about my background with this movie. I don't actually remember when I first saw it. It had to have been growing up, one of those movies my dad was like, you got to watch this. I know I rewatched it for a philosophy of film class. And then it's so rewatchable that I'm sure I've watched it a dozen or so times in my life. But every rewatch, I kind of oscillate on how bothered I am about the Rita character and how I feel about how the movie treats Phil's attempt to romance her. I know you mentioned like that is the most problematic part for you. Has it always felt that way? Have you gone back and forth on it at all?
You know what? I'm horrified to admit this, but it took me a while, and probably not until watching it for the podcast. And this was one of our older episodes, so it would have been around like 9 years ago that we covered this. But that I even like started to think about how like the implications of how fucked up it is as far as how he approaches this romance, because he's definitely manipulating the situation.
Yes.
To get more information out of her and adjust his self in such a way that he will seem more appealing to her. He does, I guess to his credit, he does often tell her what's going on, but by the next day or the next time, she doesn't know because it's only him reliving this loop. And so it clearly sometimes he hasn't told her that he has spent, X number of days with her. And so all the times where he's like, I love you. I know you really well and I love you. And then sometimes she's like, "Aw." And you're like, what do you mean? That would be like going on a first date with someone you've never met or you only like very peripherally know. Because it's established earlier on that they, I think, meet like basically that day or like the day before, because she's new to the like whatever news show and they haven't really met before. Maybe they know of each other, but this is kind of their first time interacting, is like them riding in the car from Pittsburgh to Punxsutawney. So they don't already know each other. So for him to, and also like, oh my God, there's all these scenes where she's like clearly trying to keep things professional and he's like trying to cross a boundary, because as far as she's concerned, they met like yesterday and he's like flirting with her and trying to kiss her all the time. And she keeps being like, this is moving too fast for me. And you're like, he's her subordinate.
That was because I had forgotten that it really does establish like, oh, this isn't like the new-ish producer who he kind of is like interested in but also annoyed by. It's like, no, the first time he sees her, she's doing the blue screen. It like that is the situation, but it's unclear what her level of seniority is. Like, is she just like a segment producer? Is she like a top producer for the news broadcast? Like, really, I think it's fun that it tells us that she has like a really wide, varied history, which I think a lot of people can relate to, like being like, how did I end up in this job? But it doesn't establish like what her level of seniority relative to him is, or even how long she has been a producer, which he's obviously seasoned. Yeah, I don't know.
It's bizarre, but he constantly manipulates the situation. And that's why I need to rewatch Palm Springs. But when it came out, I remember thinking, oh, the love interest of the Andy Samberg character is on the time loop with him. So there's no opportunity for him to manipulate that situation and use that to get her to fall in love with him, she's very much privy to that information. And in fact, I use that example, like the Palm Springs versus Groundhog Day, in my like intro to screenwriting class, to basically just demonstrate what happens in your story and like what choices you as a writer make mean something, and they have implications. So like be careful of what the events of your story mean or imply, because it's like very different to have a rom-com love story where a man is manipulating a woman, like manipulating a time loop situation to get a woman to fall in love with him, versus the woman is also in on it. So yeah, that's been my like recent takeaway from various rewatches of this movie.
Well, there's something with the Palm Springs comparison. There's something so romantic about the idea of like they're going through this together, as opposed to like what is both a successful but like muddies the romance part of it, is like this philosophical, like you are in this hell completely isolated, and that I think really works for the character, but does, like as you're saying, muddy up like, well, we're not really learning anything about her life experiences. I mean, we're seeing how she reacts to certain things and certain conversations and get her history. The other argument is that's every other character besides Phil, but like we're not getting a sense of anyone's shifting life experiences. It is all background for him to learn his lesson.
Right, exactly.
The thing that that struck me with this time, because I was thinking of it with the 5 stages of grief narrative, which is that is often presented, especially like bargaining onward, in a like faith kind of scenario, because bargaining is often like, oh God, if I do this, will you change my fate? And I find that interesting in the script because I think that phase is the least like one-to-one obvious, because you don't see him like talking to God or any sense. I guess there was a prayer scene that was cut from the movie, which is interesting, but the bargaining sequence is defined by Rita. And every shift into like the next phase of his life is kind of like by her. It's her rejecting sleeping with him when he thought that he would have that shot. And then it's like this moment when he decides to embrace life and start accepting it, because I think that's like when they have the one like really good day. That's kind of a perfect day. So there's an interesting thing where she is almost like a placeholder for a god of sorts, in terms of like him pinning his situation on her and trying to bargain with her to get her appreciation. And it's, on one hand, I hate it because it's so tropey of like woman equal perfection, man equal bad. Like man needs to be good in the eyes of the woman to be like get out of his self-loathing, which like, yeah, you should get out of your self-loathing. We don't want to hear you with that, but also like that's not a woman's job to absolve you of that. But there is something interesting of like when he has his I'm going to be a better person moment, it's not like a performance for her. It's like it's something he finds inspired in her outlook on life. And I think it's just because I've been so upset all the time about how much all of the pleasant things in life are under attack right now. But I was just this idea of like, oh, it's not just being a good person, but it's like reading literature and learning to play the piano and like finding that inspiration, like the way the movie celebrates that. That's almost inherent to her and inherent to the town, of just like in the simplicity, like finding all of these little beautiful things that you can fill your life with. Made me very emotional on this rewatch. Even though I was like, oh, but that's like such a woman on a pedestal sort of thing that like brings her around at the end too.
Right. Totally. I didn't even I didn't consider that too. I mean, but that is always the the case, or at least often in movies where a man has to redeem himself. The woman is already this like flawless, perfect creature, which, you know, sometimes is that reflective of real life and me versus the men around me? Yes. But, no, I kid. But yeah, it is. But I'm always like, what about, a woman's redemption story, or like, let women be shitty too. I don't know. That's not the hill I necessarily want to die on. But I was trying to figure out if it's like, I don't know, the whole thing where it's like men would rather just like be a shitty person for, I don't know, 10,000 days and wallow in self-pity and self-loathing than like be nice to one person, and it takes him forever to get there. But then by the time he does get there, it seems like it's a long enough time in addition to that where he learns the piano. He gets to know everyone else in town. Like he figures out the schedule of like the women whose tire goes flat, and the little boy who falls out of the tree, and the Mr. Groundhog man, who is aka his brother in real life, who chokes on steak and has to be saved. Like he does all this other stuff, and then the unhoused man who he helps, and that actually kind of represents a turning point in the movie where he realizes like, well, this man is going to die today no matter what I do. So but are there people who will live on, who I can help and actually can affect change for? And so the whole third act of the movie is kind of him being like, just sort of like building community and like helping his community out.
And like following the Rita arc, I wish the movie was more explicit that is inherent to who she is. But there is this piece of like, he figures that out because he realizes like he knows there's something about her that brings joy to his day, that like when he has the choice, he has no interest in the rest of this town. But he is like, if I'm going to have to go through this time loop, I'm going to spend every day on her. And he realizes like, one, this is not the way to like love a person or to attract them. Like the moment she like really rejects him, like that's it. He finally like is like, okay, I can't keep doing this. She's not going to feel this way about me. But he like starts turning towards something that is inherent to her, and that is this openness and like curiosity about who the community is, and that she like is here in Punxsutawney for the first time and is like, I find this so charming. I find this ceremony a riot. Like that she's really just like everything about it. If she had the chance, she would probably want to learn everything about everyone in the town. And that's also what starts turning her in a more meaningful way into wanting to fall in love with him in a way that is maybe believable a touch more at the speed that it would happen. But it comes back to like, it has like not even looking at her at all, but it's like this quality to her that, to what you're saying, it turns completely to this idea of forming community and not like just walling yourself off, not just to people, but to like anything else that the world has to offer, besides like the only other thing we know about him is he's itching to get a better, higher up news position. That he doesn't even seem that passionate about.
No. I think maybe the script needed a little bit, I mean, no, I don't think, I know the script needed more Rita in general. And I mean, we do learn more about her than most movies that have a male protagonist. and have a love interest who is like mostly sidelined and like there to simply be the love interest. Like she's elevated as a character slightly above that, where we learned a little bit about her backstory and who she is as a person. But most rom-coms that are like, I guess, broad rom-coms and not ones that have this like additional like sci-fi magical realism time loop component to it, poise both characters on a more like even playing field where we learn like kind of equal amounts. There's like a dual protagonist situation, and that's definitely not the case here, and that happens at the expense of like seeing Rita's interior life or getting a sense of her. Like if we, I don't know, this might be corny, but just spitballing here. If there were examples of while they were hanging out, she was kind and generous to people just because that's the type of person she is, and he would ignore that over and over and over again, and then finally be like, wait, she seems to really derive joy from that. Maybe I should try it. But we don't see that. So it feels like we're just kind of told that she's sweet and nice and generous, but not really shown that. And so I don't know why you would do that as a screenwriter, but
Yeah, because it's not like she starts learning stuff about the townspeople. She doesn't go out
Right.
of her way to like talk to the waitress or to talk to the
Michael
mayor.
Shannon,
Yeah, Michael
for
Shannon.
example.
And so if anything, it like also sets him up where not only does he live up to be like the spirit of who she is, but he also is like far exceeds her in terms of just like being the star of this town in the way that like she's still kind of just an audience member to it and like a like purveyor, I guess.
Which is especially bizarre considering she's the one who's like, I love small town America.
Right.
It's more real. And he's like, I hate it here.
It's like for gross reasons, but even Chris Elliott interacts with more of the people in the town than she does, I think.
Oh, yeah, because he's like trying to hit on every woman he sees, more or less. Yeah.
Well, this is a Michael Shannon podcast, you gave such a great entry point to talk about that. Michael Shannon's stellar role as Fred. So some interesting backstory. I mentioned at top, this is Michael Shannon's first film role. He is 17 filming this movie.
What?
Yeah, so he's soon to be 18, but I think by the time production finished, he would have still been 17. He's like truly a kid. I don't know Pennsylvania law, but I don't even know if he could legally be married.
Those laws were not relevant to my interests at the time. So I was on like a 17-year-old, as a prospective bride. So
yeah.
I wasn't paying attention to that.
But Michael Shannon has two scenes, but gives a little bit of insight to the background of this movie. And as I mentioned, to some of these tensions between Bill Murray and Harold Ramis. And what I think is notable is that he is 17 and this is his first film set. So he says, this is in an AV Club interview where they talk about some of his different roles. I'm going to read a segment of this. I remember I walked up to Bill Murray. Bill Murray had a little boombox that he would listen to between takes, and he was listening to Talking Heads. And then he talks about like, you have a favorite band when you're young. Talking Heads was the big band for him. So I was standing there watching him groove to Speaking in Tongues. And I got so excited. I was like, Bill Murray likes Talking Heads. I like Talking Heads too. So I'm going to go up and ask him about it. So I walked up and I said, Mr. Murray, you like the Talking Heads? And I realized as soon as I asked the question that it was a profoundly stupid question, because obviously he was standing there listening to the Talking Heads. So he kind of looked at me like I was slightly slow and said, yeah, I like the Talking Heads. So then I was crushed. I was devastated and I was moping around. And he goes on to talk about how Harold Ramis talked to him during lunch, offered to play pool with him, which is very sweet. And they were talking, and he was like, "Hey, are you having fun?" And he says, "Yeah, but I feel really bad. I think I said something really stupid to Mr. Murray." Tells him the story, and he's like, "I don't think Mr. Murray likes me very much," which is like just a very sweet, like
He keeps calling him
17-year-old
Mr. Murray.
Murray.
Oh.
So he talks on like 2 weeks later, they finally do his Wrestlemania scene, which we'll talk about in a second. Harold Ramis comes up and is like, "Now, before we rehearse this scene, I want Bill to say something." And Bill turns to Michael Shannon and says, "I like you, Mike. I'm not upset with you. I'm sorry if you thought I was upset with you." And like this turns Michael Shannon beet red, because he was like, "I thought this was a private conversation, and now Harold Ramis is like trying to broker, like be like, Bill, can you please apologize to this young man who looks up to you?" He compared it, he was like, it's like saying, I really have a crush on Sandy, and then the person goes and tells Sandy. I was just beet red. So it's like Michael Shannon is like used as a pawn of Harold trying to be like, "Bill Murray, you should be maybe not an
such a
asshole
dick to people."
Yeah. It's like Michael Shannon's like saying that he felt stupid asking that, but it's also like, you're 17 and on a movie for the first time, and it's Bill Murray. Of course you're excited that Bill Murray is listening to your favorite band. Like, that's not a stupid question.
Oh, no, not at all. Especially because so much of like small talk or like any attempt to initiate a conversation with someone you don't know is usually like a pretty obvious thing. Like, that's just how human interactions go. Bill Murray, if he wasn't such a fucking asshole, would have been like, "Yeah, I love the Talking Heads. Aren't they great?" And then they would have had a little chat about it. So what if it's an obvious question? For him to be like, yeah, duh, dipshit. I like the Talking Heads. Like, fuck him.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Also, like, one, that album came out like 10 years before they're shooting this movie. One, you should be impressed. A 17-year-old is very excited about speaking in tongues.
True.
Secondly, I'm not nearly at the status of Michael Shannon, and I hear this anecdote and I'm like, "Michael Shannon, you like the Talking Heads? Let's talk about what song was Mr. Murray listening to? Call into the podcast." Like, that's just a very understandable impulse. So yeah, Bill Murray just, there's so much like Chicago lore about Bill Murray. People like to treat him like this folk hero, and I have a completely unrelated like Bill Murray performing at the Chicago Theater anecdote. That this is like Daniella Chicago talk time.
Please.
I used to work at the Chicago Theater, which is like our historic, it used to be a movie theater. It's historic. It's on State Street. It's now operated by Madison Square Garden.
Awesome.
We love conglomerates. But I was an usher, and at a time, like, so many different concerts are coming through, and also like some stage shows, like Wizard of Oz did a couple of musical performances there, blah blah blah. But there's like different rules for every production when you're an usher, if you've never been an usher before and you're listening. The one that stands out to me is Bill Murray was doing this tour with his friend who is a musician, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the friend's name. No disrespect to the musician. And it was a night of the friend and some of his like bandmates playing songs, and then Bill Murray would do readings. Which I don't think the audience knew that's what Bill Murray was going to be doing. I'm pretty sure they thought it was like, Bill Murray's going to be doing comedy. It's going to be like Steve Martin and Martin Short. Like, and he was like, "I want to read Ernest Hemingway." Whatever.
Sure.
That in itself is fine. But he had a rule, which was that during his monologues, no one was allowed to re-enter the theater if they had exited it for a drink, bathroom, or whatever. But during the music, it was fine. Which, first of all, like, very rude to the music. The music is not interludes.
Right.
But secondly, some of these monologues were like 16, 20 minutes. And the audience was not notified of this. So you would have people who relatively understandably were like, "I am not that interested in hearing Bill Murray read Ernest Hemingway. I'm gonna get a drink right now. And I had like us ushers were like outside of the house, like standing in front of the doors, preventing a dozen people who had just come from the bar from like coming back in for 16 minutes while
Damn.
Bill Murray's reading a poem or a short story or something. It was so self-indulgent, and I'm not
Yeah.
against anyone who likes to read monologues. I'm not dinging that.
Sure.
But the layout of the show was insane, and that was not what people thought they were seeing Bill Murray for, certainly.
Right, and then he's like, "Do not interrupt me.
Yeah.
If you leave, you have to be punished by not coming back in." Wow, what a prick.
Yeah. So that's not the same as being like, Mr. Murray, do you like the Talking Heads? That's my Bill Murray, I have a grudge against him story.
No, I've heard a lot of things to this effect where like he is not a nice or good person, and he is revered as and sure, like, yeah, as a comedic actor, he does great work, but people will like excuse his shittiness. I mean, it's the whole separating the art from the artist kind of thing, and it's just like, well, what about how he's a bad person who, as you hinted at earlier, has been like abusive to women, and so not a fan of Bill Murray.
I do love hearing that that Harold Ramis was like very sweet and was like, come play pool with me. Are you enjoying yourself? And again, speaks to like very much of a push and pull that seemed to be happening. They really should have had Andy McDowell, if everyone was going to be working on the script a little bit. Andy McDowell should have worked on it a little bit, but
tell me about it.
They did not reconcile either until like right before Harold Ramis died. Like Harold Ramis tried to get him on this movie called The Ice Harvest, which is a John Cusack movie. And like had to go through Brian Doyle Murray, who was like, Bill says no thanks. Also, he didn't mention you. Like, it was just like so cruel. And it just sounds like, it doesn't sound like Harold Ramis was the one really holding the grudge.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, honestly, it seems like Harold Ramis was dodging a bullet by not having Bill Murray in his life anymore. But damn.
Anywho, that's a bit of an aside. Michael Shannon.
Yes.
And his great scene stealing delivery of Wrestlemania when he's delivered tickets as part of Phil's Goodwill tour.
Hey, Fred, how was the wedding?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for making Debbie go through with it and everything.
All I did was fan the flame of her passion for you, Fred.
You are the best.
No, you are the best. Rita, this is Debbie and Fred Kleiser.
Hi.
Here you go, kids. Congratulations.
What is this? No way.
Wrestlemania! No way!
No, we're like gonna be in Pittsburgh anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Connors. You're a real pal.
Oh, this is the best.
But a little bit further background on his career. So this is his first film role. He was like working on stage for like a good amount of time, and at this point, like at 16, had won a Jeff Award, which is like our theater awards.
What,
like
Jeff?
like
a Jeff Award?
Was like already a superstar and like working pretty regularly like in Chicago's theater scene. So like that he like found his way onto what is like a very Chicago-based set. There's some further character actors, I'm sure, like contributed to his excitement for seeing Bill Murray.
Sure.
But it's just like a very appropriate first movie to be in. And that he brings so much gravitas to his two very enthusiastic lines is a testament to his award-winning acting already at age 16.
Yeah. WrestleMania! That's so cool too that like his first movie is such an iconic film, because a lot of actors' first movies are things you've never heard of, or things they'd rather pretend they were never in. So good on him.
Yeah, and I do I'm this is not a visual. We're not a video podcast god, but I do
so
have I do have Michael Shannon in the movie as my Zoom background because we have to bring him in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that is really fun about him in this movie, and I sent you this clip as a highlight before, but I think this speaks to like what you were talking about with some of the success of the repetition in the movie. So he says that even though he only has that one line in the diner, every single diner scene, Harold Ramis wanted every actor that was in that scene to be there, regardless of like which version of the diner scene it was.
I was going to ask about that. If like he was there on set like every time, or if it was just like the moments where he's like actually featured and saying lines. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, so he says he was on set for like 2 weeks, and it was mostly the diner, I guess, sequences, because it was multiple scenes. You only see him, I've tried watching out for it. You do only see him in the background of the scene where he has a line, which is Phil's demonstrating to Rita his vast knowledge of everyone in the diner and lets Fred know that his fiance is having second thoughts. But for Eagle Eyes who want to watch that scene, he does stay in character and act out a very impassioned confrontation with his fiance in the background of that scene.
Wow, I didn't notice that. And also, until you sent me that clip, I didn't realize, because in the third act, when Phil Connors is going around to all these people and helping them, and then there's a whole scene where a bunch of people come up to him and thank him for all of his civic duties, and it's Michael Shannon's character and Fred. I forget that that's his name, Fred. And then what's his fiance's name?
I don't remember her name, but fun fact, played by the same actress who like does a lot of voice work, including Princess Bubblegum in Adventure Time.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. But I don't remember the character's name.
Wow, look at us not remembering a woman's name. But anyway, we'll go the betrothed couple thank him, and then he's like, by the way, here's your little wedding present. That scene is very memorable to me. What I didn't, and so my point is, like, all the people who come up and thank him are people we haven't really previously seen, or at least we haven't seen in the context of him helping them. Because obviously we've seen like the Brian Doyle Murray character, but it isn't until the third act where Phil Connors like saves his life from choking, right, and then after the fact they thank him. I think it's the Michael Shannon character and his fiancée.
Debbie.
Debbie.
Fred and Debbie.
Frebby. So I think they're the only ones of that group of people who he helps, and then they thank him in the third act, who are set up earlier on to the point where I didn't even realize that they were being set up in that diner, because that's a different sequence where he's going around and he's saying, oh, here's Dolores, she wants to go to France, and here's so and so, he wishes he stayed in the Navy, blah blah blah. So I didn't realize that there's some interesting symmetry there that I never noticed until you sent me that clip.
This is Doris. Her brother-in-law Carl owns this diner. She's worked here since she was 17. More than anything else in her life, she wants to see Paris before she dies.
Oh, boy, what are you doing?
This is Debbie Kleiser and her fiancé, Fred.
Do I know you?
They're supposed to be getting married this afternoon, but Debbie is having second thoughts.
What? Lovely ring.
This is Bill. He's been a waiter for 3 years since he left Penn State and had to get work. He likes the town, he paints toy soldiers, and he's gay.
I am.
Yeah. No, it's very fun because they are also like arguably the only characters in the town to that extent who have like a beginning, middle, end.
Right.
Because it is posed like, okay, like, of course Michael Shannon is continuing to have a conversation with her in the background, because it is posed they're going to get married. Now we know that Debbie is having second thoughts. They have to work it out, and then it's resolved because Phil talked to her and they do get married.
And they got married. Also, so like in that scene where he's going around and introducing Rita to a bunch of the like townspeople, he is like, he does not understand boundaries because he outs a gay character and like, don't do that. And then he also says like, yeah, this is these two people, they're about to get married, but Debbie's having second thoughts. Like, he's just like saying things that he has clearly learned like in private or just like whatever. Don't, like, he should not be outing these people and telling that, so he's not a good guy, this Phil Connors.
From like a screenwriting standpoint, it is like the movie does have such a trick that it can do things like that because it's never like they're not going to know and they're going to loop the next day.
Right. There's no consequence.
Right. So it's like, it is both the most like self-indulgent, infuriating part of the movie, which is that like we get to watch this guy get to do things with no consequences, and it is built into the script that he gets to do it with no consequences because it is all for him to learn something or to provide exposition or to do a joke. But it is still like, it is a device so he can do things like be like, oh, and this guy's gay and they're gonna split up. And
the sequence where he robs like an armored truck.
Yes.
I don't know if he does that every day, but it makes me wonder, because the scene that happens right after that is him rolling up in the Mercedes. And so you're like, okay, he spent all that money on a car. Later, when he hands a wad of cash to the unhoused man, I'm like, is he stealing the money every day from the bank, which is not a crime, I think.
And does it in a very non-violent way, like the most non-violent way.
In a way that you could only do if you were living in a time loop day after day,
right?
And like saw an opportunity and seized it, which he does. But I'm like, okay, does he do that every day? And is like this wad of cash part of what he stole earlier that day? I'm just posing a question, mere curiosity. But it's wow, what a movie, what a film.
That is a great question because and I was just thinking maybe his comeuppance for assuming he has no consequences is that he does buy a shitload of insurance from Ned. And then time loop does not reset. And it's not addressed, but it is kind of like, oh, you gave Ned so much money. But maybe now that you're bringing that up, not that I have an ethical issue with it, but maybe it's not so much comeuppance because maybe it was money that he had stolen from the bank.
Right, because he spends money on Wrestlemania tickets.
Right.
Where
did he buy those from?
Where indeed? Yeah, I don't know.
Mercedes and Wrestlemania.
Yeah, the Punxsutawney is the hub of both of those places, so he had easy access. Where did he get those? Also, what else does he do that day? He apparently buys or borrows a car jack and a spare tire. He's really investing in the people of Punxsutawney.
That is what we call a circular economy. He's taking the money from the community and putting it back directly into the pockets of the community.
Wow.
And then Rita did earnestly donate $333.88 or 88 cents. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course I went for 69. Ugh.
Wow. But yeah, I forget what the charity was, but yeah, that's her own money.
Yeah, I think it's just like their annual
Groundhog
Day fundraiser. So I do, and we're talking about some of the existential questions here. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about doing good. So I do, in terms of Michael Shannon's filmography, what I'm talking a little bit about on this podcast is he frequently finds himself in movies, whether it's a role he's playing or larger themes in the movie that really look at America, Americana, American ideals. I think in this movie, there's certainly a lot of Americana, the idea of like what it tells us about America is maybe a little bit more broad and galaxy brained. But I do want to ask then, you know, what can we take away about this movie that it tells us a bit about America? And on my end, I do want to bring in, because again, this is a Labor Day episode. Something that struck me with the philosophy of this movie and with Phil's approach is that even though he doesn't have to, he finds out the time loop pretty quickly and he continues to do his job. He like continues to do the things that are expected of him, that he has already worked out pretty quickly that he can do bad at his job, that like he doesn't have to take this seriously, but he still decides to go through the motions of I'm going to do my job at the ceremony. I am not going to sabotage it more than being a little sarcastic. I am going to you know, go through the motions of falling through the rest of the day. And like this monotony of like, no one tells him he has to do this. And he's figured out some rules very quickly. And he chooses like at bare minimum, I'm going to do my job. And I find that very interesting of like in the movie's philosophical existential question of like the meaning of life and like what makes for a happy life, that like it never occurs to him initially to break these cycles of what is expected of him on February 2nd.
I think there's like at least one scene where he does clearly bail on his job for the day.
Right. Watches Jeopardy.
Yeah. But in most cases, it seems like he does go to work. Now, you could look at this from a narrative, like a logic point of view, where he realizes that the commitment for him to cover this is maybe an hour where he has to go to the Groundhog Festival,
right.
And not doing it would create tension between him and Rita, where she would probably fire him and then he wouldn't have any kind of shot with her. So my thinking is that he probably just goes through with it because he knows it'll be quick and easy. And I mean, what's easier work than something you've done a bazillion times? I like the way that, like, you know, as a stand-up, you go on stage and you almost just like autopilot your jokes after a while. He's probably just doing that. Although you do see him give a different like monologue almost every time, which helps with the like avoiding the repetitiveness of the movie. But you know, he's probably just like on autopilot. But to your point, thematically, yeah, I guess it takes him a while to realize like, hey, I've got this, I can take advantage of this time loop in a way that it doesn't hurt or manipulate people, and in a way that like enriches myself. And he seems to learn French, question mark.
Or at least French poetry.
Right. Or at least one verse of a French poem. But yeah, he does different things to like enrich his own life and then help others. But it takes him a really long time to get there, which I think it is very American.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where most Americans never even get there, but it, you know, I don't know what I'm saying or if it makes sense, but
it's like interesting because it's almost like how long it takes. You know, we probably all have, oh good, a cat's coming to join soon and to knock things over. Why are you choosing now?
Does she ever tell you that there's 6 more weeks of winter?
I wish. Although we do joke, oh God, we do joke that he's like hyper Catholic. There's like a whole lore to him. And so I would not be surprised if like he really, you know, if he went through a pretty heavy bargaining phase. Said a prayer for world peace. No, there's something of like, this is both, it doesn't have to contend with the realities of why we can't just have this anti-capitalist fantasy, which is like, if you could do anything with your time without having to worry about profit or like delivering on certain things. Like, what would you do with every day of your life? And I think like we all have maybe answers to that, but you know, this doesn't reckon with why that's normally not accessible. But I do find it interesting that it reckons with like, as you said, like this kind of American, like even if we had the opportunity, what are these like ideals ingrained of what we're supposed to do? And like also coming from Phil's self-loathing too, and maybe this kind of everyman quality that I do think like both Murray and Ramis are putting into this character. This idea of like he's never even thought about what the world has to offer him, and there's a lot too of like when Reed is talking about what she sees ideal in a man, and he makes a kind of problematic joke of like, are we sure we're talking about a man right now with, you know, some of the more sensitive aspects? But he does embrace a sensitivity, and there is like a challenging not only of his asshole ways, but like of just what like, oh, I've never thought my day could be different. Like, and that has to come after him trying to end his life, because like that extremism before he's like, I could do something different with my day than what I've done the last like however many days.
Thousands, hundreds, whatever.
Yeah.
What do they say? It's something like the definition of like an idiot is someone, or like of stupidity or whatever, is like someone doing the same thing the same way but expecting different results.
Yeah.
Like that's the first like 2/3 of what he does throughout the movie. And so he is a dipshit, I think.
Even Rita like kind of shows in her being like, well, I studied, you know, like I came from, I forget where she said she was originally from, but like I was from here and I studied French poetry in college and now I'm a producer. And this idea of like, sounds like she's restarted her life a few times and is very content with it.
Yeah, but didn't occur to him to do that for a long time. Took a time loop for him to get there.
If you lived in an anti-capitalist fantasy that was simultaneously a hellscape, but and I guess like you have a connection to Punxsutawney, but you know, say you're in a small town that has these what we think of as very limiting boundaries and like options to it, but you had to live in the time loop. Like, what would you do to maximize your time or try to like really make each day different?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I thought no one would ever ask me this. And that's why I don't have an answer prepared. I would get a massage for like 30 minutes. Knock that out. I would the scene where he like really overindulges in a big meal.
Yeah.
Yes, I would absolutely do that. I would, of course, also do things to enrich my own mind and self and support my community. Although it's weird because it's like, well, it doesn't have any long-term consequence. So if you are stuck in a time loop, like obviously it helps someone, but knowing it's only on a very short-term basis. So you kind of have to like pick and choose like who's in like desperate need of help today.
Yeah.
Which I guess what Phil does. Yeah. Like he prevents a couple people from choking or falling out of a tree. He helps some people with a flat tire. So it would have to be like pretty like temporary things. You couldn't really plan for anything long-term in a time loop. But yeah, I would find things that would be helpful to someone short-term. But if you're stuck in the time loop, you can improve yourself by reading a book or, you know, watching a bunch of different movies. And you'd get, oh man, I always complain about how there's too much content out there and there's not enough time to consume it all. And I'm like, but if I had a time loop, I could watch everything. So I'd watch a bunch of stuff. I'd read some books. I'd help people who needed short-term help. And eat a lot and have a nice massage What would you do with your day?
Oh man. I certainly, and I got like the briefest of tastes of this, like quitting my day job, where I was just like, I'm gonna read all of the books that I haven't been reading, and I'm gonna sleep in, and I'm gonna like play this song on the piano, all of that. But I would definitely like take advantage of that. I feel like I would probably like obsess over some sort of academic subject. Like I would like choose like a science or something and be like, all right, I'm gonna learn like everything about botany or something and just like try to log some time in the library where I know, okay, I'm not gonna get disrupted on this educational path. I can just see it through and then know something about something.
And the way that the characters, and I think it's Happy Death Day 2, learn like quantum physics question mark. But it's to try to help them get out of the time loop. But now they have that knowledge, so good on them.
I would probably like figure out, I mean, it sounds like it's, in this case, it's all Groundhog related, but I'd be like, what's on the events calendar for today? Can I go to every event?
And even if you can't go to every event that day, just wait for the next day. What you miss, you know, on February 2nd, number 278, you can try on February 2nd, number 279.
I feel like I'd probably have like a trying to look into the humanity of like, or the like human, it's not human, but the rights of like groundhogs. And I'm sure I would have like a free the groundhog phase.
Yeah, of course.
I'm trying to think, because I think the movie and what you said touch on all of the main things, but I'm trying to think of like one, like really, I would never think to do this, but maybe I'm thinking of it now. I think I would like, something I notice I do lately on walks or like try to do more is like look up at the buildings I walk past every day and try to like notice an architectural feature that I didn't catch about them before. Because it's like, it's something you take for granted. You walk past it all the time. And I think I would probably like, be like, let me look at every house in this small town. It's still not that many. And just like get a lay of like, yeah, what this person's house has like this characteristic to it, or this person loves garden gnomes or something like that. Just like those little characteristic things.
You gotta stop and smell the roses. It does suck that he's stuck in Western Pennsylvania in like the coldest time. The most miserable weather, also because there's like a blizzard that comes in that prevents them from leaving, so it's like snowy and all, like truly that alone would be hell for me, just living every single day in a frigid snowy climate. Although okay, so part of the reason that he's stuck in Punxsutawney is that they do try to leave and there's a blizzard and they close all the roads, so they come back and they have to stay an extra day. There's a certain point where he like removes something from their van, I think, to be like, well, we're going to waste time like leaving and then having to come back. So what if I just remove, I don't know. I don't know cars. I don't know if this is a carburetor. I don't know if this is a spark plug. But he takes something out. And then Rita's like, oh yeah, the van still won't start, but what's Chris Elliott's character's name? Larry?
It's Larry, yeah.
Larry. He's like, she's like, Larry's working on it. But he does different little tricks where he's like, I can save time and like spend more time with Rita if I sabotage the van. So that's something he does.
I have Blizzard questions about the movie, and they're not the most important, but I'm like, the blizzard doesn't actually seem like it really hits the town. Like it kind of seems like it's just the outskirts and it's brief.
Right. The drive from Punxsutawney to Pittsburgh would probably be about 2 hours. So yeah, I don't know how far they get before they have to turn around and come back to Punxsutawney. I don't know. That doesn't get addressed.
Well, this has been such a good conversation. Do you have any further thoughts on Groundhog Day and or Michael Shannon and or Punxsutawney?
I'm just so proud of him that this is Michael Shannon's first movie. It's a really cool first film. I can't wait to listen to your podcast and learn more about his career trajectory. I think I don't have much else to say. We've really covered a lot. I keep trying to work in a joke where I'm repeating myself, but it just
I stole
hasn't come
that
up.
from the top.
Yeah,
I'm so
and
sorry.
you nailed it. So like, and I was like, maybe it'll come up organically, but it just it didn't. So well done, you.
Thank you.
And yeah, and this actually just makes me want to rewatch Palm Springs.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, and I know that they've spoken so much about how can you not, but that this was a really big influence on that movie, and so I think you got to watch them back to back and kind of see how they deal with the romance differently. And Palm Springs is just much more romance forward, but yeah. Well, is there anything that you would like to plug? Where would you like people to follow you? I feel like I know that there's a Bechdel Cast Midwest tour, but this may actually be coming out right after it. Last night you were in Chicago, is that right?
Yeah, August 31st. There's an upcoming show in Madison, Wisconsin on September 4th, I think, and then a show in Minneapolis on September 7th. So check out those if you can. Otherwise, just listen to the Bechdel Cast. We did cover Groundhog Day. It was many ages ago in the time loop that is our lives. So I don't remember what we said. It probably doesn't age well, the episode, because it is 9 years old. So you know what? Don't listen to it. Listen to a more recent episode. Let me look at, I'm trying to see what Michael Shannon movies we've covered to stay on theme here.
That's such a great idea.
We have done The Shape of Water, so check out that. We've covered Knives Out, which I might be one of our Patreon, aka Matreon episodes. So I don't know if you would have easy access to that.
Highly recommend subscribing though.
Oh, thank you so much. I would recommend it as well. Whoa, he's in 8 Mile?
Yeah.
He's in so many movies that you just put in. We have not covered Premium Rush, but I do remember him being a pretty effective villain in that movie.
He really shows up, especially like prior to like him breaking out in Revolutionary Road. He just shows up in everything.
Yeah, he's always got some bit part. Oh, okay, no one saw this movie. It's called The Current War.
I saw it.
You saw it too?
No, wait. Okay, if you have a few more minutes, I don't think this is in the preface for this podcast. The Current War is the reason this podcast exists.
Really?
Yes. So my husband / the producer of the show, Joe, him and I, we've been Michael Shannon heads for a long time, and he had joked for a bit that we should do a Michael Shannon film festival, to which I was like, sure, that's so much work. and like I have to have venues, like I love that idea, but no, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. And then we watched The Current War, which we had such low expectations for, and I loved it so much.
It's good.
It's really good. We will talk about it eventually on the podcast. Maybe I will invite you back for that one too, because I haven't met anyone who has seen it.
Literally no one saw. I don't know what compelled me to go see it in theaters, but I did. And I was like, wait a minute, this is actually like low-key really good. And Nicholas Hoult is in it. Another actor I love.
It has a complex background to that too, because it was a Weinstein movie that was supposed to come out November of 2017.
Maybe that's why no one saw it / it was not advertised.
It got I think it changed distributors and it did get a theatrical release, but it got really quietly released in like 2019. But so it was but yeah, we watched it, and something about, as we were watching it, I was thinking about like he really does have such a diversity of roles, and like you could talk about so many different things with him. And I was like, wait a second, we don't need to have a Michael Shannon festival. We could have a Michael Shannon podcast.
Podcast.
So yes, the current war will forever be like the honorary, like true top Michael Shannon movie of this pod. Anywho,
wow, what a guy.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for being on, Caitlin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Listeners, listen to the Bechdel Cast and follow Caitlin and follow the cast. And if you're in Madison and Minneapolis, go see them live. Thank you again, and we'll find you listeners next week when we talk about another exciting Michael Shannon movie. Bye. Thank you for listening to Hand Me the Mic. I'm your host, Chicago-based culture journalist and critic Daniella Mazzio. You can follow me at Daniella Mazzio on all social media platforms. You can also subscribe to my newsletter at room-tone.ghost.io, where you'll get the most up-to-date info on the podcast and episodes sent straight to your inbox. This is a completely free DIY podcast. Support is optional, but greatly appreciated. Special thanks to producer Joe Engleman for research and production support. This episode was edited by Daniella Mazzio. The Hand Me the Mic theme song features vocals from me, Daniella Mazzio, and a sample from R.E.M's Nightswimming. Hand Me the Mic's closing theme is Hallelujah the Hills' 01, untitled, actual title, Joker One, from the recent release, Deck. The full list of resources cited in the episode and some further special thanks are available in the description. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts for future Hand Me the Mic episodes. Bye!
They're supposed to be getting married this afternoon, but Debbie is having second thoughts.
What?